way lower than the other guys.
He's good, and the other side about those where he's not that funny. He's kind of like
no, he's not a
funny,
comedian,
but he's funny. But he's funny enough. Like that, he does.
Matt Walsh is funny in that like he points out clown world.
Yeah,
like he doesn't actually even do comedy.
Yeah,
he just says like, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
This is what you are all okay with.
Right.
This is what you're signing off for.
Exactly.
When like you want gay marriage and like homosexuality taught in schools.
Yeah,
you're signing on for Drag Queen Story Hour.
Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes elected judges from Milwaukee are running Drag Queen Story Hour nonprofits, and they're also uploading child porn.
Yeah. Like, right. They do right, and they do. There's this. That Turtle Boy article that I sent you to, this whole thing where it's fucking madness.
It's everywhere, and like people the leftists will make their funny little comics like, oh, they just want to read stories, they just want to do that. Why do you hate people having fun?
I don't even understand where the where's the objective benefit? Like what's the argument?
So the argument is that they're it's diversity and inclusion. It's the same argument every time they take some sort of...
Drag queen's like a hobby.
It's the same... It's the same argument they always use when they inflict perversion and corruption on our society. It's for diversity and inclusion. We need to teach these kids when they're young to deconstruct traditional gender roles so they can be more accepting of people from alternative communities.
Right.
And I've done more research on this because I've gotten in arguments with people about it, like my girlfriend, my friends, whatever. And they're like, well, if they want to be there, it's okay. And I've always wondered, do they want to be there? Because most of the time,
who's they? The kids.
And their parents, right?
Yeah.
Because most of the time when I went to the library as a kid, it was part of an after-school program or some kind of community thing. It wasn't like my parents signed me up to go to the library to hear the guest speakers, right?
No.
But what I've been finding in a lot of this Drag Queen Story Hour is it's very, curated. In that, these activist groups, like the ones run by the judge from Milwaukee who just got arrested for uploading child pornography, organize it with local organizations of parents and activists, right? And a lot of times they'll link up with people I know you're gonna love this, people from the Unitarian Church,
right,
and those fucking creepy weirdos, they create almost like a photo op.
It's all performance art. Yeah. It's definitely all performance art.
And that's not to say
there would be... Sorry, not to interrupt you. There would be no Drag Queen Story Hour without press.
Yeah. No, they essentially create a photo shoot. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So activist group Drag Queen Story Hour Inc. contacts the local Unitarian Church and says, we would like your help organizing with some of the parents in your group to do a Drag Queen Story Hour. They obviously think it's a great idea. They put the word out in the local leftist social justice ecosystem that they're planning to do it. And then next thing you know, in the next week, they have a Drag Queen Story Hour with a bunch of photographers and journalists from the local fucking Lugan Press to do a photo spot. And then they publish it in all the usual suspects, your HuffPost, your Washington Post, your fucking Teen Vogues, all your fucking gossip rags and corporate press outlets to talk about how amazing it is, right? And that's not to say that there isn't ulterior motives. I don't think it's just a photo op and just producing good press for Drag Queen Story Hour. They're trying to normalize the content.
Yeah, that's right.
Like Matt Walsh, like we were just saying, the most recent tweet I saw from him was another expose on a different Drag Queen Story Hour about asking if the kids knew how to twerk, and when they did,
that's right.
He wanted to give them a demonstration. So there's no argument of why can't you just let people enjoy things? Well, if the thing they're enjoying is sexualizing children,
is dangerous
and warping their ideas on healthy relationships and healthy hobbies. While at the same time we're being told that certain organized sports and certain other activities are dangerous for children.
Right.
It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
And so a guy like Matt Walsh, who's not really that funny, and is kind of has boomer takes on stuff,
totally
looks hilarious.
Absolutely.
Because he's just tweeting the news.
Yeah. So the drag thing is really weird. I mean, the best kind of take is drag is blackface for women because it is.
Yeah.
But it's also explain to me.
They're also the gayest of gays.
Well,
that's something I heard on I was listening to Legion of Skanks because they had Milo on since Milo Yiannopoulos says he is straight now. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not.
So hold on, we can go into it. But the whole thing is that
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, we'll talk about that.
And I think I like Milo.
I like him. He's a troll.
Yeah. I think I do.
He's a provocateur. Yeah. He says things that that are deliberately.
Well, there's the only why I said I think I like him is he does a little bit of like the Jon Stewart thing where it's like I'm gonna say something that I would probably even agree with, but then he gets a little bit of flack when asked to really articulate that position. He kind of falls back on, well, I'm a provocateur.
Yeah,
and that's a little annoying.
Which is why he fell from prominence. Because yes, he did get banned and purged from everything, but there's lots of people who got banned and purged from everything,
absolutely,
and were still keeping and building a platform because they had good ideas and like good methods. All that drag queens are like the gayest of the gays. Like I feel like you don't often meet someone who is a well-known drag queen, and when you meet them in their personal life, you don't know that they're gay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's absolutely yes, it makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's not like these are like I remember when I was a kid, and what I'm about to say is considered another form of bigotry and oppression, but like our lessons on like gay acceptance.
Sure.
Where they're just like everybody else.
Yes,
they wear jeans and t-shirts just like you.
Correct.
Like they watch football and baseball just like you.
Yes.
They go to the theater with their partner just like you.
They don't define their entire life
on through their sexuality. Yeah. And it seems that like the drag culture and like the super fucking gay in your face culture is like the natural inversion of that.
It is. Yeah.
Where it's, and this goes to what a lot of people talk about with like race, a lot of people talk about with like religion and the war on God, is like it's not about equality, it's about supremacy.
Absolutely.
It's about determining that we have a state religion wokeness, that we have like a state sexuality, like not straight, that we have like a natural or an unnatural order,
right?
Which if we barrage you with enough propaganda, will become the natural order.
Yeah, there's a I'm gonna butcher the quote. I think it's a Soul quote. It's something along the lines of, marginalized groups find out what equality feels like, and they realize that it's not supremacy.
So
it's something like that.
For anyone who read or watched Dune,
I want to try. I know. It's not.
And there's a new movie coming out which supposedly is going to be not as long as the
original.
No shot
it's going to be good.
It's going to be bad. It's Dennis Villeneuve. It's going to be bad.
There's no chance it's going to be good.
There's a quote that says, "When you are stronger than me, you fight for freedom because that is equal to your values.
Right.
When I'm stronger than you, I want to take your freedom because that's in line with my values."
That's like, quite good.
That's what we're seeing right now.
I think Frank Herbert was a pretty smart guy.
Yeah,
I just can't get through
that. That's what we're seeing right now in terms of like one thing you talk about how conservatives are more tolerant. They place a higher value on freedom. They enjoy liberty over security.
Yeah.
And the other side, the liberals do not.
That's right.
And like when conservatives are in power, they're more this is one thing we talked about a lot. They're more concerned with preserving their philosophies and their decorum.
Yeah.
Of we're not going to impose our beliefs on you.
Yeah, they're more conscientious.
They're more conscientious. We're going to allow you to handle your own problems, states' rights, all that stuff. And then when the liberals are in power, it's the opposite.
Absolutely.
So, like that dynamic is not by accident. And
certainly by design.
And Drag Queen Story Hour is one of the ways I think we see it manifested in that you have, I'm not a religious person, but it's undeniable like the assault we have on not just Christianity, but like the entire framework of Judeo-Christian values.
Well, and
while that assault is lauded by the media and cheered on by the entertainment sector and cheered on by the monoculture of the left, they are imposing their own cultural values.
Absolutely, yeah.
With no regard to the choice of the kids.
That's right.
Involved.
Yeah. It's why. Again, it's why I always go back. So Andrew Breitbart, who, and again, I don't.
R.I.P.
Yeah, for real.
For real.
Yeah, this is a guy who, and his kind of famous quote is, all politics is downstream of culture, which is true, and it's like that's what we talked about a little before. It's like kind of this ANCAP place that I'm finding myself not. It's not a bad thing, but it's like we all are forgetting that piece, which is again like none of these systems or infrastructures, whether you have whether you have true it's an oxymoron, but a system of anarchy, or whether you have sort of this weird bullshit that we have right now. Like none of them actually none of them matter, and all of them get crushed by culture. Like culture just crushes all of it. Like it doesn't matter. Like your playbook, just like it just doesn't fucking matter unless you have culture. And then now that kind of begs the question, like, so what do you mean by culture, and what, and you know, how systemic is that on its own? But it's still true nonetheless. And it,
I mean, if the people collectively decide one day that a crime is not a crime, there aren't enough. There's enough force to enforce that law. Yeah. Right. Like if not even if 10 million people decided to not pay their taxes. Yeah. Like they're what are they going to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
no, that's right.
They will go through the motions to begin locking them up.
Yeah. Yeah.
As like to their ability. Sure. Right. But there's going to come a certain point where they're not going to have the resources, the manpower, or the will to continue enforcing a law that so many people are just deciding. Yeah. They're not going to do anymore.
Well, and I mean it's not a it's a bad analogy, but it's like it's like the Afghanistan project, which is that we want them to follow our laws, and there's from a big L laws. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know what the population of Afghanistan is. I mean, is it even is it a million? I may be like
I don't
totally wrong.
think there are official numbers.
Yeah,
I don't think they do like birth certificates.
It's definitely like that, not like 10 million.
Probably not.
Right.
It's probably not.
It's probably not and like 5 million.
And they don't have like a cohesive identity as Afghans.
Yeah.
Like well, in a broad sense, yes. Yeah. But like they would consider themselves that. But like there are different tribes, there are different sects, there are different warlords, there are all sorts of like different subdivisions.
Yeah. Well, the point I'm trying to make is like the whole fucking world at some point has tried to get Afghanistan to do certain things. Yeah. And they just fucking don't.
Not gonna do it.
So now let's bring that over again. There's 300. Like to your point, it's like if Afghanistan can, and I get it, it's on the other side of the world and priorities and whatever. But it's your exact point. It's like if 10 million Americans, it's like there's no chance anyone anywhere could do anything. No.
We've talked about that before. Like
to the state of Texas.
If people just stopped wearing the masks, we wouldn't have mask mandates.
Yeah.
We talked about that before. That like if the people are not like willing to stand up to their government, the government can do whatever they want.
Yeah. That's right. So one thing I wanted to, this is different. This is kind of more traditionally what we talk about. What I want, this is like
we usually ramble for a few minutes.
Yeah. Well, this is a hard weird segue. So this weekend is like the NCAA wrestling tournament.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which I'm big into.
Yeah. I watch the highlights after.
And oh really? Yeah. I still follow college wrestling pretty closely, and I still coach, and I'm still kind of in the community. But how I thought it could kind of translate into what we talk about generally is we kind of talked about last week, I guess it's 2 weeks ago now, like the culturally kind of stealing yourself from the things that we find issue with in the government, but and talking about sort of true like ecological independence in terms of like go find your own 40 acres and a mule, and fix it up and own and control that land, and you're more ecological, you're more self-reliant, all those things. And I wanted to I also we're not going to talk about like the specifics, although I could do like an actual podcast about like college wrestling, which I like. But I bring it up because I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts around, particularly, and we'll talk about men now, but whatever. I have this kind of theory that I'm working on, how it's important for men to compete physically and specifically compete in a combat context. And one thing that I thought was pretty interesting, and again, we'll go back to Peterson. He was there's this study he was referencing recently about saying how early exposure and participation in like basically wrestling, not from like although it can be coordinated, basically like a son wrestling like with his dad.
Yeah.
Or like fighting with his brother.
Yeah.
That seems to be a high if when young male children participate in I think he calls it like rough play.
Rough play.
Yeah. The instances of ADD basically like disappears. Yeah. And that's kind of it. And I'm like, that's interesting. What they don't seem on this to me to be correlated. Yep. I don't, what like why is that? And I wonder how it, if we could tease that apart, and also what it means for development, like moving forward.
Yeah, young men. I think I would agree in that young men need a certain amount of adversity, conflict, and physical resolution to that conflict. Right? And people, when you advocate for these things, people say you're advocating for bullying and harassment and all these other things. Like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever.
Right, just whatever.
Like, yeah, like
that's my response is just whatever.
Like if you were lucky enough to grow up your whole life and not get bullied by anybody, and you somehow turned into like and I'm talking about a man, a fit, assertive.
Yeah,
confident
this
person.
is kind of where I want to go with this.
Good for you. You kind of won at the lottery, but for the rest,
I don't think it's possible for you to. If you weren't bullied, you did not.
No, yeah,
you did not become.
I'm talking about a hypothetical person.
Yeah,
I don't really think anyone grows up like without getting bullied, right? Unless you're in like a completely sterile bubble boy environment, which. If you are, you have a whole host of other more severe. You are not socialized properly.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. All right. This is good. This is where I wanted to go.
I guess what I'm getting is that like. It's not enough to just be in good shape, and it's not enough.
This is what I want to talk about. Good.
To just understand the academics of combat, right? Like if you understand boxing on paper, like you need to have a degree of physical experience, so your fucking lizard brain can contextualize this stuff. You need to be prepared to do violence and have violence done to you.
Yep.
And if you have not had that contextualization, like when you get put into the scenario to defend yourself or defend someone else, or get into a mutual combat, you will not be ready. And if the other person they have a huge advantage against you.
Absolutely.
Regardless of your size, regardless of your mentality.
Yep.
If they have been in combat situations and you haven't, they immediately have an advantage over you.
Because
they know what to expect.
Right.
That this is going to suck.
That's the ultimate escalation point, too.
Yes. And
it's like it can't go further than this, and I'm comfortable with the furthest degree that this interaction can result in.
And like we both wrestled. We both did a little bit in college. I've been in fist fights. You've been in fist fights. I've done some MMA. I've done some jiu-jitsu. I've done some other stuff. Like and
it doesn't take a shit ton. You don't have to be a lot. You don't have to be George St. Pierre.
You don't have to be a black belt. You don't have to do things. But if you want to be a confident, competent, strong man, you probably should get into a few fist fights when you're young. Not like going out to a bar looking for fights.
Absolutely.
Not like starting problems with people. Not pounding on your little brother because he's the only one available.
Right.
But like you go to school and someone calls you a faggot and you say fuck you and he gets in your face and you get in a fight. Right.
Yes.
Now like I don't think it's good from the sense of like people can get really hurt. You can crack your head open on the ground.
Yeah,
like,
we have to have
become severely traumatized.
Well, you know what happens? Sorry, not to interrupt.
Yeah.
You know what happens when you do experience violence is you really respect and understand what violence can produce.
So that's where I was going.
And you can't trivialize the fact that poor context violence is a fucking bad idea.
Yes.
If you're in your first fight in the middle of a parking lot,
you get off the
bad fucking news.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No, that's totally valid. I mean, I'm not. Once you have had these experiences, you have a much healthier respect for violence. And you know the possibilities of what can happen. Like once you've been in a few fights, you understand that like if someone gets hit wrong and falls down, they could die and you could go to prison.
That's right.
Like
absolutely.
They like one wrong hit, one wrong fall. They become a vegetable. You go to prison. Your whole life is over because you wanted to be Tommy Toughnuts in the parking lot of the bar. Right. That's not what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about when you're a kid.
That's exactly right.
And someone tries to punk you and you stand up to them. Even if you lose, even if you get beat up.
Almost especially.
Even if you get beat up by the bullies, like whatever, dude. Like when I stood up to my bullies, I fought them. And when I got beat up, my dad went looking for them because he's a fucking thug. Not the bullies, their dads. And then I wasn't allowed at their houses, and it was a whole fucking thing that spirals out of control. But at the base, like atomized level, of like Timmy fights Tommy.
Yeah, right.
I don't really see much of a problem with it.
Oh, I definitely don't. I don't
really see much of a problem with it, as long as things don't get out of hand. You know, if we get to Stephen King book levels of violence, where like 12-year-olds are threatening to throw you off a cliff and like stab you, that's really bad. And I think, you know, if we normalize youth violence to too much of a degree,
I agree with
it opens up possibilities for things like that. But just like the people I've met who can get into hairy situations and navigate themselves out of them and the people around them, more often than not, are people who are comfortable with violence.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Because the people who are uncomfortable with violence become panicky.
Yes.
They become emotional. They become scared, and like they don't know what to do. And at that point, they either freeze up or they freak out. And like neither of those scenarios are good if you're like in a bar and someone wants to whoop your ass, right? And like the way in which we have like made fistfights into like a felonious assault, I think is not really a great thing.
Well,
like,
what do you mean?
So if you're not in a mutual combat state and two people get in a fight,
I think I understand.
and like one person loses,
yeah,
like you could get the other person charged with assault and battery.
I understand.
Depending on what kind of shoes they had on and what level the fight went to, you could get them charged with attempted murder. You get them charged with assault with a deadly weapon. Like, let's take it down even a level. If two guys get in a car accident and they get into road rage and they beat each other up, they're both losing their license for years.
Right.
Like 3 to 5 years.
Right.
Like, what effect do you think it's going to have on an angry, depressed, emotional person who now lost his ability or her ability to get themselves to and from work, or to get themselves like to pick up their kids? I'm not saying that they shouldn't be punished for like pulling over on the highway and smashing each other's faces in. Like, they should be punished. But we've like taken, we like, our society is so focused on removing violence as a conflict resolution method, right?
Yes.
And at a level, like, that's a good thing. Like, that's part of like the liberal enlightenment is like to settle
might
things.
Doesn't make right.
Yeah, to settle things with ideas and legal conflict resolution. But if you completely remove violence from like the human condition, like, you're gonna get other methods of oppression which are almost more insidious. Like,
this is exactly why I wanted to talk about this and how it fits into what we talk about generally.
Like, for me, a strong man, like the traditional political figure of like a strong man, is less dangerous.
Way less dangerous.
Than like
absolutely
the faceless.
Dylan Klebold is way more dangerous than George St. Pierre.
Yeah, like I think that like the mass shooter guy.
Yes, yeah. But that's because he was a weak.
Yeah, he was a weak,
unactualized, not.
That's a good angle. I hadn't thought of it from that angle, but that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah. Damn right it does.
And like, I was going at it more. I lost it.
Well, so you bring up a point which I'm glad we can tease this out. I think, and we talked about this on a previous episode. In some ways, we are too comfortable. Well, we're too comfortable with violence in some ways.
Yeah,
but we're also not comfortable enough. You put it perfectly right. There is absolutely a space for violence as a conflict resolution tool. And what you will find, not all the time, but I'm pretty confident in saying most of the time, which is more than 50-50, particularly among men and particularly among men in certain age ranges, is that once physical violence happens, it results in resolution.
Yeah.
And it results in harmony. Once the explosion experience happens, the two individuals often can reconcile individually.
And what I meant more so when I meant a strong man, I meant, political vacuum happens, strong man shows up. There's an argument for Donald Trump as a strong man, right?
Sure.
I'm way less scared of that than like the faceless corporate elite hall monitor.
Oh,
right?
yeah, yes.
In terms of like what can do more damage to society and like what can do more damage to my way of life and like my like standard of living.
Yeah.
It is not like the strong man who got there by bludgeoning other people over the head.
Oh,
right?
I see. This is a different thing, but
which is why I kind of got thrown off by the Klebold, although that's a spot on fucking analogy. Is like I am so much less scared of the guy who got there through fighting and bludgeoning other people, metaphorically speaking, if we're using Trump, than I am the people who got there through fucking skullduggery and trickery and clever funding.
Would you rather have Trump or the bureaucracy?
Yeah,
the bureaucracy. I would rather, and I don't like, you know, kind of take this to the extreme because again, Trump's not the best example because I don't think he's actually strong.
No, he's not. Pinochet is a strong man.
Yeah.
Trump is not a strong man.
And this is tough because no one's taking us out of context, but whatever. If you were to take this comment out of context, which I wouldn't care about, but whatever, it's like, would I rather have Mussolini or like FDR, fucking bureaucratic, top down, the inevitable result is Brave New World? I'd rather have Mussolini.
Yeah, I'd rather have Mussolini. I say that unironically. A lot of people don't understand that, like, you know, Mussolini's fascism rejected the racial components of Hitler's fascism.
It did, that's right.
And he's like, listen, dude, I've had fucking North Africans in my country for like 1,000 years.
Yes, right.
Like, and the culture is like completely mixed. If anyone's seen True Romance, there's a great scene.
Yeah.
True Romance?
A long time ago. I need to see it again.
Do you remember the scene with
it's really good.
Christopher Walken in the trailer with the dad?
Yes.
And he likes history.
Right.
And he's, oh, you're Sicilian. You've been, you're all N-words.
Right?
Yeah. So there isn't like the same easily condemnable aspect as Hitler's.
Sure.
Where like Mussolini didn't, you know, he
I don't know enough about Mussolini.
I've just started studying him, so I don't want to put my foot in my mouth too much.
Yeah.
All that's to say, like, yeah, I would choose that over the neoliberal global homo bureaucracy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Like, yes.
And just to go back to what I said earlier, so in terms of conflict resolution, like you said, once it explodes, it resolves. There's no lingering issues. Sometimes there are, but you know that's more.
But like
those are grudges.
But
that's
not really.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's like you took my basketball, I want it back. We got in a fight, I got my ball back.
And
whether or not that person holds a grudge and still wants to fight you, you still got your ball back.
Absolutely.
And you settled the dispute of someone took my property,
right?
And I want it back.
And it's over.
Yeah. Whereas I'd like to touch back on my issue. When I was in like the 5th or 6th grade. There was a kid at my bus stop who was the height he was in high school in the 6th grade, right? And
sure, yeah.
So we were all small little pudgy kids. He was like 6'3" or 6'4", like in the 6th grade. And he dominated everybody, right? And like every game we played and everything everyone played.
Right.
And he had older brothers who I'm assuming bullied him because
definitely.
One of them was late teens, one of them was early teens, and then this guy was about 12.
That younger brother was tough as shit.
Yes. So and he was big for his age.
Yeah.
So I think he could fight back against his brothers.
It's a tough combination.
More than like a regular 12 or 13-year-old could, which led me to believe, not at this time, because I was 12.
Yeah.
But later, like, he probably fought back against his brothers because he was the same size as them.
Yeah.
So they bullied him even harder.
Absolutely.
Because he was that big, right?
They resisted.
So he bullied everybody else. He bullied me. One day I had enough. I told my dad what was going on.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, just fill your bag with your heaviest books."
Yeah.
And when he tries to just hit him with the book bag.
Yeah, right.
So I beat this kid with my book bag full of textbooks.
Yeah.
Until he was crying.
Right.
Well then, later that day, his middle brother, not his oldest brother, because the oldest brother was like 18 or 19. He must have got some sense at that point.
And you can't be right. Yeah. You're not fighting 12-year-olds.
Right. But the 15 or 16-year-old brother had no problem with that.
Sure.
So he's like going around my neighborhood looking for me.
Right.
We grew up in a nice town, but I was in one of the less nice neighborhoods.
Sure.
Where shoes on the power lines and stuff like that. Nothing serious.
Yeah.
So he's looking for me. Well, my dad finds out.
Right.
He freaks out. He goes over to the kid's house.
Right.
And knocks on the door. And he tries to get in an altercation with this kid's father. Right? Now, on one level, it's, that's badass, your dad's badass. On the other level, it's got me completely ostracized from all neighborhood activities.
Right. Yep.
For the foreseeable future, for the rest of my adolescence, right? Yep. And like, I wasn't invited places. Yeah. The parents talked about my parents. They already didn't like my parents because they were kind of odd people.
Sure.
They got further pushed away. I got further pushed away. It even got to the point where like their sisters wouldn't hang out with my sister.
Yeah, that happens.
And it created this entire like chain of events where like, I don't know, maybe if I just filled up my book bag and beat up his older brother, things might have gone differently.
Or if you took yours and that's that.
If I took mine and that was it, I may have had better relations with those people throughout my adolescence.
Right.
It could have gone another way, but like I think about that now and I'm like, wow, when I was a kid I really liked my dad doing that, but maybe it didn't have the best result for like me and my socialization.
Yeah.
Right? And like it took until like late high school for like me and these neighborhood kids to patch things over.
Yeah.
And honestly, that probably had a lot to do with the fact that I sold weed.
Right.
And,
sure.
And less to do with the fact that they liked me or
yes.
forgave me for beating him with the backpack, and more just, all right, this guy has like good
So
weed.
here's a question. This is a really good anecdote. Here's the question. And you alluded to it a little bit with like the escalated cartoonish Stephen King level of violence. Which is cartoonish for some people, but maybe not cartoonish for others.
Yeah.
Do you think do you think that you would have actually been in real danger if that if you did settle it with the older brother?
Not really.
Okay.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was an older
But
kid. No, not really.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Probably not, right?
Yeah, probably not. I don't really think so.
Yeah.
And there had been like more serious fights in my neighborhood over the years, and they never got out of control.
Yeah.
From what I understand.
So the reason I asked that is because the natural, which I agree with, the natural response in a dialogue around this type of conversation would be, well, there is obviously there is a line, right, that can't be crossed and shouldn't be mediated by the participants, right?
Yeah,
because they generally can't see that line.
Right.
Which is why we want combat more often than not to take place within a regulated context. Now, and I want to talk about that too, because I wanted to get it into wrestling and what it does. But there's a part of me that is really difficult to articulate, and it's really difficult for me as a father who wants this to happen to both his sons, but understands that there's risk, and it's going to be hard for me to articulate this. So bear with me. There were fights that I was in that are real fights. And I'm specifically thinking of wrestling practice. There were wrestling practices and certain moments in wrestling practices, whether it was actual wrestling or like the games we would play and stuff, where I actually did like, it's tough because I'm not a veteran. I've never been in a war. I'm not a first responder or whatever. But but there are times when I've been in situations, in fights and otherwise, where I do like fear for my life, and I'm thinking of a specific time where there was a wrestling practice. I remember where we had just gone, and hard practice. It was probably before you were on our team. Hard practice, and we would do. We had just done like an end mat drill. So I'm like spent, and I'm 15, I guess, and we then do a slap fight as a game, right, and what ended up happening was everybody, including the coaches, basically gang up on me, and I get kind of like 5-star pinned down, like 4 people on each of my arms, like can't move,
like when they brand what's his face in Jarhead.
Yes, like straight up, and similar thing. And I think I had my shirt torn off, and I might have had my shorts torn off too.
Probably.
And I was getting 5-starred, a 5-star is a open hand slap. To like the stomach,
chest.
Balls, face,
like kung fu
by like full go.
Yeah.
With other high school boys and 2 of my coaches.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking in that moment, I'm this is it.
Yeah.
This is I can't, like, this is it. And I obviously, this bleeds into, like, I academically, like, that is, and by every definition, like, hazing fucked up bad. If that like got out or whatever, that's like a fucking, CNN story.
Yeah. In 2006, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
In 2016, it might have been a
and it's
story.
like, but like, I'm tough as fuck because of stuff like that.
Yeah, and
shit just doesn't bother me.
I'm with you.
And
but to come from another angle, so for everyone who's listening, my co-host here is very type A personality.
That's
very, very, if you haven't figured it out already.
Right.
very kind of big man on campus kind of thinking. And for me, I was always kind of more of an outcast, cynical, full of shit.
Right.
Whatever. And I would band together with the other fucking full of shit, outcast, cynical people.
Right.
And like we would get like minor bullied and hazed regularly on the team.
Yeah.
Like stand up straight, you faggot, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
which was fine. We didn't really care.
Yeah.
But it was important that it was shown to us.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there for this incident, but I was there for other.
You definitely seen
I saw
others.
stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
It was important that the team demonstrated, no. We're not just bullying you and the other fucking losers.
Absolutely.
We're bullying the type A Chad
everybody.
Jocks too.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's getting it.
Yep.
And like if we get too tired of Dan's big man on campus smelling his own farts, we're gonna pin him down and slap the shit out of him.
Absolutely.
And like that's something you hear from in the military. That's something you hear from in like fraternal organizations.
Yep.
That's something you hear of in any situation where you have competitive men who are interested in developing themselves and each other.
Yep.
It's important that you don't put anyone on a pedestal.
Absolutely.
And show that they are immune from this harassment or criticism or
Correct.
bullying or whatever you want to call it. And like that mentality is being like persecuted right now.
Yes.
The idea
Absolutely.
that like certain people can't be held accountable for their actions. Now, like when we talk about like culture doing it, it's sort of in the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's you can't take marginalized people and hold them accountable. But the people who disagree with that, people like us on the right, have no problem with like holding the big dogs accountable.
It's essential to this. So this is why I'm glad I get to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I had not put it in that context, but that's quite insightful.
Mm-hmm.
What we, again, kind of on the right want to do is not lionize our leaders, etc. And we want to see the ritual hazing of those because it's important for everyone to get it. Much like it was important, because you're right, and I was good, and I still am good. But like that's exactly right, and it was probably a scenario where I was being It's like I probably deserved it.
You probably
in that
did.
moment.
You probably talk shit all day.
Yes.
And then the person who told you to stop, you wrestled them and whooped their ass.
Yes.
And then like.
And you can use first Dave's. And Dave was probably like, "Fuck you."
Yeah.
And got it all, and was just like, "You're getting it."
Yeah.
Like,
you
and
probably
that's what
did your fucking say anything bullshit.
Yes.
So I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I got whooped because I ran my mouth all the time.
Yeah.
And you guys thought if you beat me up enough, I'd shut up. It didn't work. It just made me a better wrestler.
That's right. It does. So and this is where I'm getting like it. So where it's tough for me, and I can say it like as a father, is. It's like I want to there is like a line, it's like I want that scenario to happen, but there's a line where if someone like laid on my face and didn't get up that's obviously a line.
Yes.
But so I think about it with my two kids, and I still coach and I still wrestle,
like the sexual shit like we saw with Tugs. That shit got fucking bit right in the ass.
Yes.
Yeah. None of that shit.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a line. You can't have,
Haha, bitch, I use your nickname. What are you going to
do? So, but it's like, and this is so weird, but I'm glad, and the thing is, like, we talk about it, which is why we're better than everybody. Mm-hmm. We talk about it, but everyone, like, does this shit. No. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I want to put my kids, my actual biological kids, as well as like the kids I coach and the kids and the people that I'm around. Mm-hmm. It's like, I want to drive you to the farthest place you can possibly go all the time. Yeah. Because I give a shit about you. And because I know there's no other way to develop you better. There just isn't.
No.
Like, brutal. And the point is, you have to have that thought in your head. Like, you have to meet that experience of like, this is it for me. And you have to get there before it works. It's like the Fight Club thing. Yeah. It's like when and again, I don't know the quote or whatever. It's like when you're willing to lose everything is when it's like you actually can't be actualized until you feel that sheer terror, goosebumps, heart pounding. You don't think you're gonna make it, but then you do. And it transforms you. It's life affirming. It really is.
You don't think you're gonna make it, and that's when the panic sets in, right? And you start, and just because you use the Fight Club thing, and you start grasping at anything you possibly can to make it hurt less. And in Fight Club, they have the chemical burn, and he says you can either put water on it and make it worse, or you can chill the fuck out. And put vinegar on it, and you can think about it, and then you know to put the vinegar on the burn.
Yes,
right? Like that is almost the more important part of it. Is you have to get to the breaking point and realize I'm fucked. That like is not going to help you to shake and cry and scream and wail and grasp at straws. You need to, in this moment, right now, figure out a solution.
Absolutely.
And you need to do it right away. And that's something that one of the best ways to learn is through combat.
Absolutely.
And you know, and like you said, we're not veterans in terms of martial combat.
Right. I mean, I've never. Although I have been held up at gunpoint twice. I have had a gun put in my mouth. Hempstead is a scary fucking place.
I imagine.
So that happened, and again, I'm not. This is really not like some badass. I mean, it kind of is now that I think about it. But it's like I wasn't panicked.
No.
I'm like I'm not gonna die here.
No.
And I didn't even, I mean, part of it was I didn't really have, I had nothing. It's like, okay, you can have my, you can have
my student ID.
What exactly?
$18.
Exactly. It was like, okay, and this is going to be used to
find.
I
just have my license back?
Well, it was funny. This is going to be used to find you, and it was. So like they got arrested. They're like, oh yeah, this guy used your credit card at this fucking gas station. And we found him on security camera and caught him.
I mean,
honestly, but it was like that. I was like, not. It's this opposite thing where it's like when everything's crazy, when you have had those experiences that ramp up to 11, like everything's going crazy, everything else gets quiet. It's like, and I'm like, I'm not gonna die here.
Yeah, I bet.
Whereas if I panicked and went nuts and maybe twitched around and and we weren't positive, it was very likely that gun was not loaded at the time.
Yeah,
we found out, but it might have been. And I certainly was under the assumption that it was. And
chances are, you say Hampstead, New York, it's probably a stolen gun.
Yeah,
and it's not easy to buy.
We did know that it was a real gun, though.
Oh,
we did find because the guy got caught and we found it. But it was like that, and you're right, that like the noise, while everyone else was panicking, the noise just came right back down because there was someone else with me. And I remember that was something, and he did fine, but he was panicking and was and again, appropriately so in a lot of ways. Like he was crumbling, but it didn't help. And the reason it didn't escalate is because I didn't panic. That's what happened. The other one, I did fight back because I thought it was a fake gun. I think it was a fake gun. And it was also a white kid that I knew. so I was like, I'm like, this is not real, and I know it's not real, and you're just some like wannabe from Connecticut who's doing this, So it was like, fuck you. And there are also like 6 of us, so that helped. But anyway, but again, it could have been and whatever, and who knows. And there was panic among people. But it's like, so there's a thing that I say, and my wife is perfect in a lot of ways. But there's something we disagree on, kind of fundamentally. And she's not totally wrong. So, so my son's 5. And and he is tough because of me. But there are times where, like, he'll fall and he'll like hit his face or whatever. And again, he deserves. It's okay to be whatever. But I do say, and I say all the time, stop crying. But I also say crying will make it worse. Not like you shouldn't cry because of some like fucking stupid fake reason. But actually, like biologically, psychologically. When like crying and giving into the pain and the anguish makes it worse.
Yes.
So I'm saying this because I want you to get better.
And he's 5, so he's not going to have these like psychological, philosophical epiphanies about I really just needed this cry.
Exactly.
It's different when you're like 24 and you're stuck working in a call center.
Correct.
And like your girlfriend dumps you.
Yes.
And like you just need to call your mom and cry.
Yeah.
Like that's different
than
a 5-year-old scraping his knee.
And again, I'm not fucking perfect and whatever, and not everyone needs to do this, but it's like he is fucking tough. And it makes and I do it not from like I want to make him a better wrestler or whatever. Like he he's more comfortable in life. He's not neurotic. And I see, and we do things that are wrong and whatever, but I see him interact like on a playground or whatever, and I see these other kids fall, and it like ruins their day. Yeah. You know, and it bleeds into other shit, and it makes life worse. Whereas it's like, if you have that, so for me, a lot of it, I hear, it's crazy because I was describing this to my wife. I hear our wrestling coach in my head during certain things, and he said something, you know, and this is not a philosophical guy, but he's like, again, I don't know the exact words, but it's like, your mind is telling you that it hurts and you can't do it. Your body is absolutely fine. Yeah. It's like something to that effect. And I hear that shit when I'm like, oh, I'm just telling myself it hurts. You know?
Well, and this is true for a lot of coaches, is like a lot of teams have coaching dynamics, you know, good cop, bad cop stuff. Yeah. And like, he was not a philosophic person. He was a very quiet, very mild-mannered dude. Yes. But like and it's something I didn't really get at first, right? Because of who the good cop was supposed to be. Sure. Like, Dave was the bad cop. Yes. Like, everyone thought he was the good cop. Absolutely, and then Pete was the bad cop. Nope. It was the other way around. Backwards. And the way that Dave was the bad cop wasn't by yelling and blustering. Nope. It was just, you're better than this.
Like seething.
Just so disappointed.
Absolutely.
That, like, you weren't doing what you were capable of doing. It wasn't like you need to be better. It wasn't you're not good enough. Yep. You fucking pussy. It was, what are you doing?
Yeah, yes, that's a very good impression.
I heard it all the time. The kind of athlete I was, I heard it all the time. And even when I finally got good and started winning stuff, he's like, that's pretty good, but
I know, but
they weren't really that great.
Why'd you do exactly? Yeah, that guy sucked. Yeah, why'd you do this?
Why'd you do this?
Yeah. Yes.
And that is so much more effective than like Cobra Kai.
Dude.
You know what I mean?
More.
So much more effective. And like, it goes back in what we're saying, that like, if you are experienced and competent, you don't have, and some people do just by the nature of their personality, but like that's, you know, rare. You don't have this blustering fire and brimstone like emotional response to these kinds of things. Yeah. Right? This is a funny sidebar. Recently, I have a friend I want to bring on, and we'll probably get him on next week. He's going to be pissed that we're having this specific conversation without him here.
Did he wrestle with us?
No, he didn't. No, he actually he didn't. He wrestled for like a year, but he had like a I don't know what he had going on, some kind of injury. Sure. But point is, he got it fixed. He joined the Marines. He got out. Now he's the one I've told you about. Yeah. Right. And we always talk about this. So a few weeks ago, he's talking like this girl he's talking to, who's like connected to our circle from one of our friends' wives, and. They mentioned that she is like super into MMA, like Muay Thai and gym life and all that other stuff. And I've met her; she's really nice, very fit person. Sure. And so they're talking or whatever, and we're in our group chat, our conservative group chat, and he says something about, I bet she could take you guys, and the whole chat lights up. Yeah, the whole thing lights up. Right. And I'm like, I don't know, I don't think
it's the Goodfellas laughing emoji.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Which is. Not a emoji, GIF.
And our other friend is in this group chat as well. And so he says this, and he's one of the ones who really pushes back on it. Sure. And as you know from his persona and hobbies, it would not seem as if he is trained in any way.
Certainly not.
So, and the whole thing pops off, and my friend, who's the vet, says, listen, guys, I'm not trying to insult you, but like, as someone who's trained women in combat, if you aren't, as a dude, like, trained in these things, and if you don't have, more importantly, if you don't have experience in, like, getting punched in the face and getting, like, kicked and kneed, like, you're not going to be as well prepared for it as you think.
Yes, that's true.
And, like, if you're really out of shape, it's possible someone like this could take you. And, like, this incensed everybody. And, like, I'm pushing back in a logical way as we are now. Right. Like, no, man, like, I've been hit.
Absolutely,
I've been hit.
There's
like I
no
know,
chance.
I know, like I'm 230 pounds. Like I'm 6 feet tall. I know how to punch. I know how to kick. I know how to knee. I know how to wrestle. I know how to grapple. This 135-pound girl, no matter how trained she is, isn't going to do anything to me.
No, not a thing.
Not a thing. And I want it, but I also want to say, but he could totally kick so and so's ass. And like at the end of that, but those other people, jury's out.
Yeah.
But I didn't, because that would have been rude.
And it's funny, and I'll bumble through this too, because we hear stuff like this.
Yeah, and it's like, and it now with fucking Clown World, it's gone into everything, right? Like you would think, and then at the end of it, I said, obviously, Jake, it was necessary for us to do this because we're very secure in our masculinity.
Yeah, right.
And absolutely had to explain how we could beat up 135 pounds.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We couldn't just leave it be.
We couldn't just leave it. Yeah, you couldn't just let it be a joke.
We had to turn it into a fucking dissertation on the differences between male and female biology.
Well, there's a funny thing. So yes, because there's also
and that kind of diffused the whole thing. Everyone's like, okay, you're right. Yeah, we are taking this. There are plenty of too serious.
And listen, there are plenty. So it's
but it goes into like Fallon Fox and like the transgender in sports and like yes, Fallon Fox was a biological man that transitioned to a woman and broke a woman's skull and then won another fight. She did end up getting beat by a woman who tuned her up. And like, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. Yeah. That absolutely happens. Right. But like, as you talk about, that happens at the margins.
It happens at the margins.
It doesn't happen at scale.
Correct. Exactly.
And it's part of this whole like, I don't see them as like separate plot lines, right? Like, I don't see the removal of violence as a resolution for conflicts and the imposition of men and women's sports as like disconnected. Like, especially when a lot of sports are violent, right? Like,
it's almost kind of the definition.
Yeah. Like
I'm doing something that you don't want me to do, and I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what a sport is.
So like, if we're going to like deconstruct gender roles, if we're going to remove violence as a conflict resolution, and then we're going to allow men and women's spaces and women in men's spaces, like, how do we resolve conflicts, right?
Yeah.
It becomes like, how do we resolve these things? Because violence is no longer like a flat concept, right? It's like very like malleable. They can pull it in whatever direction they want to like define different things as violence.
Yes.
Like how do we resolve conflicts? And then like what criteria do we use? And then who determines the criteria? Yeah. Right? Like, do we want 51% of the country voting on criteria that 49% of the country hates? Yeah. Or like, are there some uninfringible truths? Like men are bigger and stronger than women. Yeah. Like yes. Like are that young boys who are socialized with rough play do better with conflict resolution? Like are there still objective truths?
Okay, so this bleeds into some of, not so much the ANCAP stuff, but a little bit. But some of that previous kind of incel MGTOW stuff. Yeah. Where it's like, well, actually men are raped by women also. And it's like, legally, judiciously, and talking about, legal processes and separating property and liberty, like, yes. But also, nope. Women can't rape men. Yes. Shut up. You are a fucking loser. There are extraordinarily small instances that are statistically irrelevant where a woman can rape a man. Yeah. Like, just shut the fuck up. You know what I'm not that concerned about? Female domestic violence to men. I'm just not. I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't fucking bother me. Grow the fuck up.
I am in that, like, I don't care.
You are bigger. Your hands are bigger. Your forearms are made of different calcium amounts. Your skull is thicker. Your jaw is wider. Well, your hips are thicker.
Let's not paint with too broad of a brush here. Because, like, women can still stab you. And, like, most kitchens have knives in them, Dan.
Fine. And, like, but men overwhelmingly and ubiquitously do violence to women directionally.
So as we know, on a level, on like a biblical level, I'm with you.
Like, let's grow up.
On a biblical, biological level, I'm with you. Where I'm not with you is like we actually look at like how we police these things. Right?
So I tried to preface it by that.
Okay.
I tried to preface it that way.
So when there's a domestic violence call at a house, right? Yeah. Like they're supposed to arrest both parties.
Correct.
They're supposed to arrest both parties, or at least take them in until reports and questioning and everything is done. It very rarely happens.
Yes.
The overwhelming majority of domestic violence incidents result in the man being arrested.
Absolutely.
Right? And now with the nanny state bullshit we're dealing with, being arrested for domestic violence doesn't just mean being arrested for domestic violence.
That's right.
It means serious repercussions to your freedom.
Absolutely.
Right? To your job, to your ability to like own and operate firearms, to your ability to work in certain industries.
This piece, I'm totally with.
So if we had an unbiased, impartial, objective legal system that punished and held women to the same standard as men, I'd be with you here. Yeah. But we don't. Right? And
so here's my thing.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But when like this men's rights activist bullshit stuff bitches about it, my instinct that I will be very difficult for me to deviate from is shut the fuck up.
Well, yeah, I mean, we see that like because we're talking about it.
Shut up.
We're talking about it in the Reddit sphere, which is I've been with this girl for a while. I've been with my girlfriend for a while. I love her, but you know she drinks and she'll get in a mood and she'll call me a loser and like really bad for my self-esteem and tell me I don't make enough money and then she'll hit me.
Right.
And it's like, all right, dude, get out of the fucking relationship. I'm gonna treat you with like the same disdain.
Or you're probably a fucking loser.
That's possible too.
And your woman is probably doing her job by telling you.
But I don't want to create a self-fulfilling prophecy for these people where they become better and it doesn't actually like improve their relationship because like. We're not talking about like we're not talking about a woman airing out her grievances about her partner not being successful enough for the lifestyle they want to live. We're talking about someone who's like demeaning and belittling.
Yes, I understand you. Yeah,
and I'm with you where you shouldn't let that become your whole being because it makes you a fucking pussy.
Yeah.
But I'm with it for in order to be better, you got to cut this dead weight.
That's
and like and your dead weight too. Like, just because you break up with that girl who talks shit in your ear all day doesn't mean you shouldn't, like, look at yourself and see if maybe any of the things she was talking about had, like, kernels of truth. You know what I mean? Like, you can recognize...
Or were mostly true.
Yeah, you can recognize that she was a toxic person who wasn't good for you, or just that you want something else, and also realize... I probably should get a better job. Like, I probably should lose some weight. Like, I probably should, like, not listen to my mom so much. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you can do that. You can improve, like, your environment and still also, like, improve yourself. And a lot of people, I think a lot of people focus on, like, if I just remove myself from the environment, then I don't need to, like, worry about this stuff.
Well, this is what I'm talking about with, if that, it's
and just, sorry, not to catch up, but also... I'm going to push back on you because I have a friend who, he was raped, and we talk about it.
No, he wasn't.
Well, he laughs about it. So there's a lot of laughter and what society at large would consider inappropriate dealing of this subject.
Sure.
Where...
remember that I'm crazier than you on this stuff.
I know you are. where we were at a party when we were very young, and he got way too drunk, and he passed out in a bed, and he woke up with a girl on top of him, having sex with him, who had been trying to have sex with him for weeks. Fair enough. Right? So, like, legally, he did get raped. And, like... He did. He
oh, no.
You know, I would... he did get raped.
Fine. Okay.
So I think it can happen.
I'll never say sorry ever.
But to deny the reality that, to take a book out of the SJW playbook, to deny the reality that men aren't the primary perpetrators of sexual violence isn't, you know...
Like, let's be fucking
Let's be real here, guys.
Exactly.
Men commit most of the sex crimes. And a lot of it's committed against other men, right?
Sure,
so, like,
plenty of it.
And women.
Plenty of it.
But... here's my big problem with that, is if you want to use that as a metric, you have to do it everywhere.
Yeah.
So what about the fact that 13% of our population happens to commit over 50% of violent crimes?
Absolutely.
A group that I won't name, lest people call me racist.
Oh,
because that
you're talking to a sympathetic person to this phenomenon.
That metric isn't applied.
Yeah, that's
right. Like you know, most. The lefties will say, well, you know, men commit most sexual violence, most violence. That's why, you know, 90% of criminals are men. Right. Well, I mean, you have to apply that everywhere.
Yeah.
You can't just pick and choose.
Absolutely.
Use and now you're playing. Okay. Now you're playing.
That's a good point.
A bigotry game. So you want to play the bigotry game? We can play the bigotry game.
So I will play the bigotry game.
Yeah.
Here's why I say men can't be raped by women is because it isn't fair because men are bigger. It is unequal. That's why there's more responsibility to not be raped. Mm-hmm. There's less responsibility for a woman to... Women have... This is, you know, this is not feminine. This is just how it is. Like, women are never at fault for being raped. Ever.
Yeah.
Men are in the instances that they can be because they're bigger and stronger and and control, and there's more with more power comes more responsibility.
I disagree.
So I'm saying that, and it's the same reason why I say I do hold different. I have different standards for everyone all the time because you bring this up. People aren't equal. That's fucking madness and stupid.
Yeah.
And it's, again, a function of time. Okay, and there's levels to this too. And again, if we want to go down into the specifics, that's fine, and I'm happy to do it. There are differences, and a 50-year-old sober man can't be raped by a woman ever.
I think so.
You know what I'm saying? You know, a 14-year-old drunk boy can probably get something pretty close to raped by a sober 30-year-old woman. That's probably true. But I'm still not gonna call that the same type of rape as even a 14-year-old boy and a 18-year-old girl, because men and women are different, and ages make you different, and sobriety levels make you different, and where you are in life makes you different. So you mentioned, which is a good point, if we have to be if we're going to be consistent, then we have to be consistent, which I agree. I have no interest in being consistent. I don't. I hold different standards for fucking everybody, because you don't ask people to be the same ever, because that's fucking ridiculous. Because people have different competencies.
Well,
I hold people who are more responsible. Well, and I hold people who have less responsibility less responsible.
That is a consistent philosophy.
Correct.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So it's like to me, it's like, like the not all men thing. It's like, shut the fuck up. Obviously, like, not all men, but the point still remains. And like, you're probably, you're abdic. You know what? As a man, you need to take more responsibility because you're better at it, you fucking dummy. Because the reason I'm asking more of you is because you can do more.
Yeah.
You stupid idiot. And it doesn't help me to feel sorry for you. And this is what I'm talking about the pain threshold and getting this is why it bleeds all in, is the people who have experienced fear and struggle and have been brought to that brink but can go through it, don't get fucking put down by aren't the people who get bullied by their girlfriends. It's like that won't happen.
No.
The
only and this is gonna sound like I'm gassing myself up, because I kind of am. The only time
have you heard me?
Right. The only time my girlfriend like nags me and like henpecks me is when she wants me to fuck her.
Yeah. Sure.
When she wants me to grab her by the throat and throw her on the bed and fuck her.
Sure.
Because she's weird like that.
Yeah.
That's the only and fellas, if you have a woman who's open to that kind of stuff and it's consensual, it's very healthy for your relationship.
Absolutely.
That the only I can tell.
Yeah.
That based on like how pissy she's being.
Yeah.
Like and not like legitimately sad or upset, but like just poking at me.
Yeah.
Just poking at me.
Sure.
And just like bothering you to bother you.
Right.
It's because she wants to get fucked.
Yeah.
And I am happy to oblige.
Sure.
Because
that's right.
I love my girlfriend.
Yeah.
And we're in a very like productive, monogamous, responsible relationship.
Sure.
And if you're in a relationship where it's normal for your partner to just like endlessly nag and
that's
berate you and like fuck with your head, you should get out, bro. And
that's
if you don't get out, it's your fucking fault.
And this is what I mean. This is exactly what I mean.
And this is like an opinion that's not popular because it's mostly focused at like women, right?
Yeah.
Who are in like abusive relationships. And it's like, well, it's not that easy. They have a psychological like dependency.
I agree with more of that.
I totally agree.
I totally agree. This is what I mean by
you're right.
Yes.
But when we're talking about like the man,
you're making my point.
And like
you're making my point.
You just go, dude.
Yes.
Like just leave.
You're
just
bigger and faster and stronger and have more responsibility.
And the fact that you won't makes you much less attractive to women.
Totally.
Including your current partner.
Absolutely.
The fact that you're not willing to stand up and say, fuck you, you cunt, and walk out.
Yep.
It makes you less attractive.
And it's why she's
doing it.
Yeah,
and I bet if you did that,
Yeah.
she probably would call you in a couple of days begging you to come home.
That's right. Yep.
If you haven't been a shithead too. Because I feel like in a lot of these things, especially what we read on Reddit, the people aren't like giving the full story.
No, they're definitely not.
They're definitely not.
They're mostly lying.
They're definitely not.
Yeah.
But even if they don't call you back and they don't want you back, you're not going to be attracted to new women if you still have the mentality of just like allowing yourself to get treated that way.
Correct.
Like, and there is a power dynamic with men, so it does make sense that abused women are less likely to leave their partners than abused men. Yeah. Because like the abused man can follow you to your apartment and drag you back.
Exactly.
Like the women can't do that. It's not like an equal equation. Like, so anytime I hear this stuff, it's like, dude, like, you got into this because you're weak, and you're not getting out of it because you're weak.
Exactly.
And, like, until you, like, nut up.
Right.
And like, saying I'm the man around here doesn't mean, like, you, like,
it doesn't mean
the 1950s Beaver Cleaver. It just means you're not a fucking bitch, dude.
Yeah.
Like, just, like, figure it out.
That's right. Well, this is, again, and whatever, like, men can be responsible for their abuse because they participate in accepting that abuse. And I also women can't.
Yeah, they don't have a choice.
They don't have a fucking choice. So it is bullshit and asymmetrical. It's like that you can obviously. This is again why. So you're totally right in that you hit the nail on the head. From a legal judicial perspective, I absolutely agree with you. From a cultural heteronormative perspective, I don't agree. It's like I don't give a fuck about like women beating up men because man, it is your fault because you abdicated your responsibility and you did allow it to happen. Women, I do care about deeply because men, you abdicated your responsibility and it's your fucking fault.
And you know what? People who have been like men who have been in abusive relationships, like will hear this, and they're not the ones who will get mad at us.
That's right.
Like they're not the ones who will get mad at us. Like it goes back to like if you are exposed to violence and hardship, you have a more of an appreciation for peace.
Yeah.
And you're better at identifying like the red flags that lead to violence. Like earlier you talked about you getting robbed. I've never been robbed or anything like that, but I have identified several scenarios that like would have resulted in us being robbed. One of which like ended up getting in the car like as the dude who was behind us like pulled his gun out of his pocket. So like I've been in places where I'm like, okay, this guy has been following us for 4 blocks.
Yeah.
We're in a nice part of this city. He looks homeless and drug addicted.
Right.
His hands are in his pockets. His eyes are all fucked up. And he's been following us for 4 blocks. Yeah. I don't think, like, he's coming to say hello.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, when I went to New Orleans, I was told ahead of time, like, hey, don't fall for these few little things that the panhandlers do.
Exactly.
Because if it goes the wrong way, you'll get robbed.
Don't talk to them.
Don't talk to them.
Yeah.
When we were walking home at night, right? When we left at 3 in the afternoon, 4 in the afternoon to go out to dinner and go to the bars, we walked out of the hotel and through an alleyway and onto the main street and everything is fine.
Yeah.
Maybe don't walk back through that alleyway at 4 in the morning.
That's right.
When you can, like, smell people smoking meth in it. You know what I mean? But, like, people who don't know what meth smells like.
Yeah.
People who have this, like, inherent, like, moral superiority complex where it's like, oh, no, they're just homeless, drug-addicted, violent junkies because of societal factors.
Yeah, something happened to them.
Yeah, and, like, oh, no, it would be mean to, like, assume that they're going to hurt us. Like, no, assume people are going to hurt you at all times.
Absolutely.
Like, and people, it's like the trick about nihilism is people, I'm not a nihilist, people think, like, nihilism just means everything is meaningless, life is pointless, there's no reason to live, and they fall into some fucking emo goth depressive episode. No, the whole point is now you can live.
Yeah,
that's right. You're not like hung up on all these grand philosophical meanings and like the pursuit of like a higher calling. No, none of that fucking matters.
Yeah.
Like just live your life. It's the same thing with like the threat of violence.
It is. It's very similar.
If you accept the threat of violence is always around the corner, you're not really going to be worried about it that much.
Yeah.
Because it is or it isn't going to happen. And like the actions that you make and the thoughts you have with a clear head will help you get through it.
Right.
And like that is more empowering than a gun or a knife or acceptance programs or fucking social outreach or whatever. And if you are exposed at a young age to conflict, violence, adversity, and terror, you'll be more well adapted for it going forward.
Absolutely.
Same thing with relationships. Well, I did so many dumb things in my first few relationships that now that I'm in a real one. I don't really think people have real relationships till they're what, like 25 or older?
Probably something like that. Yeah, that's probably true.
So now that I'm in a real one, we get into situations that we're able to navigate like very deftly.
Yeah.
And I think back to like, Jesus Christ, 10 years ago, this would have been fucking a 3-month fight.
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? 5 years ago, this would have been a 3-month fight.
Yeah.
And like, not to say that, you know, being in a bad relationship is good, but it teaches you some good things.
Yeah, yeah.
Or it should teach you some things about
absolutely.
like your own self-worth and like your own responsibility to preserve your emotional and mental health.
Yeah, and they're all of it is.
And we're like outsourcing that. We're outsourcing our mental health and our emotional stability to big daddy government.
Yeah, that's right.
We're like outsourcing it to corporations. Like
we're
outsourcing it to people who like the left have told us forever are not interested in your well-being.
Right.
But now that they're in charge of it, they are interested in your well-being.
Yeah, well, because they can get something from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is why I like to bring it back to wrestling specifically. But yeah, any kind of combat is because I guess kind of what a wrestling room or practice and competition, sports, I guess, and rough and tumble play is because it does kind of by definition create the environment to get all of those pieces that are so important into you to experience them. And it actually, I guess, more than I think about it, like it does push I wasn't gonna die in that wrestling practice. Like it wasn't, and even in things like a wrestling, a wrestling match or whatever, or anything, boxing, etc. And again, I do still think why I think the combat piece is more effective even than like a basketball or something is because you're by virtue of the way the sport is scored, you have to put people in wrestling in particular or boxing. It's like you have to render your opponent unable to continue fighting. Yeah, that's like the point. Yeah, it's not just like stop them from doing this thing, like putting this ball on this hoop, which is a good start. You're stopping someone from doing something they want to do. But particularly in combat, it's like I want to render this person unable to continue the fight, or I'm going to keep going until I can't, or I'm going to be stopped physically. And that environment just does so much for regulating relationships, understanding how you can participate in the world. Again, the person who undergoes those things has the best chance of dealing with the life scenarios that replicate that. Yeah, and I think, and I this ties into what we've talked about, how like the elites don't want you to be like a confident, self-sufficient. Why do you think people want to get rid of football? Yeah, like well, I mean, there is some serious. I understand injury but concerns. You're right. I love rugby. Yeah, I'm super into rugby. I mean, not that we have the culture, but like, well, it's part of the football thing the football thing is so valuable because you're correct, and it's kind of like when we get into the financial stuff we talk about. It's like it's more than a kernel. There's a big piece of truth to that. It's like football is dangerous for your head, and you're right. I may even not have my my kids play football, but they're not. The reason the war on football is a war on football is not because of head injuries. No, I mean it's because soccer and hockey have higher injury rates. This is exactly my point. Diving and swimming have higher injury rates. Exactly. This is my point. It's not about head injury. It's not just the injuries. It's the culture of violence. Correct. That's the new critique against it is it's a culture of violence. Exactly. It's not even so much they've kind of moved past the head injuries. That's right. Because the same people advocating for genital mutilation and irreversible hormone therapy aren't really that concerned with the state of your brain. That's right. Yep. So like it's about deconstructing a culture of violence. This is my point. Yeah. And like men specifically, but people in general, should be able to stand up and look someone in the eyes and say no. Right. I'm not doing it. This is what I'm going to do. And that's being like conditioned out of us. We're being bred to be like more docile tax cattle. Right. Like this new culture of bitchy HR woman passive aggressiveness that has like replaced conflict as the main way of resolution, even amongst the majority of men. That's way worse. It makes me sick. That's way worse conflict than violence. Yeah. If anyone couldn't figure out, I have a big fucking mouth and I have a lot of opinions and I don't squirm away from uncomfortable topics like violence. Yeah. And the passive aggression makes me seethe. I can't fucking stand it. Right. I can't stand it. The mealy-mouthed fucking pussy willow bullshit. Yeah. Like, just tell me what you want. Yeah. Tell me why you're upset. Right. And maybe
we'll find a solution. And like I can't deal with like this new age hippy dippy fucking lovey dovey, everything's all right, let's try to find a middle ground bullshit. Like no, there's not always a middle ground.
Well, and here, okay, here's, I agree with you. Here's an asterisk I would put on. There, I very much understand that there is a place for allowing yourself and others to be sad, depressed, unsatisfied.
Yeah.
It's very important that you articulated passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Because what you're describing is actually you judge people on what they do, not what they say. And you mentioned kind of the HR environment, which I agree with is a good place to start. Because the words that they're saying are passive and they're saying that they care about your feelings, etc. But it's aggressive because they actually don't. Because what they do is subvert it to hurt you.
It's a bug. It's a feature, not a bug.
Yes. Yeah. And that's very different than saying, I want, and this is a way men and women and different personalities, articulate. So I'm an ENTJ. You're somewhere similar, I think. And it's actually really difficult for me.
ESP something.
It's actually really difficult for me to it's difficult for me to allow. It's the classic thing, and this is a very classic, male female thing, and I know I always bring it back to this, and it's not always, but whatever. It's hard for me to hear someone voice a complaint or a dissatisfaction without me trying to fix it.
Yeah,
and
that's a very male.
It is, and
trait.
Yeah, and what my wife is helping me with, and what other people in my life are helping me with, is that there is a space, and I am okay. I want to get better at allowing people to vent.
Yeah.
There are times, and again, this is classic man-woman, woman has a bad day, they want to tell their spouse about it, and then the spouse comes in and says, well, why don't you do X, Y, and Z? Yeah. And it's that's not, I do want that, but I don't want it right now.
We talk about Shapiro a lot because he's one of the big faces in conservative new media for all of his faults, and that's one of the things that I think a lot of what you just said is something that a lot of men have to figure out on their own. And Shapiro is one of the first people, and he talks about this pretty regularly, right? Is that he had to learn early in his marriage. Yeah. Okay, is this a solutions conversation or is this a venting conversation? Yeah. And for weird fucking nasally autistic Ben Shapiro, it makes sense for him to say to his wife, is this a solutions conversation? Yeah. Or a venting conversation? Right. Because that's kind of like the can I kiss you now question. Yes. It's if you have to ask, I know. Don't even fucking bother. I do know. But because of Ben's unique nerd chic, he can get away with saying that as realistic advice for men, and that puts them closer to the target of when their wife needs to vent, thinking about wait a minute, Ben Shapiro said sometimes I just need
it does
but it's very real.
It is real.
You have to just back off sometimes and just let it go. But I think where I have a problem with it, and where I'm sure you have a problem with it, and you accurately pointed out, it's when that space pre-positions solutions. When that space grows too big enough to where people say, okay, well,
they don't want to be listened to and vented. They want you to stop talking so they can tell you what they want.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's the difference. And that's the passive. Yeah. It's oh, no, you're telling me you want a vent session to get me to shut up because you want to tell me what to do.
Well, yeah. I mean,
and it's that I don't have any patience for.
The left will present an issue, and we'll say, they'll present an issue. Let's use COVID. Right? Sure. There are new COVID strains, and I don't know whether or not you believe any of this. If you do, I have a fucking bridge to sell you. I don't believe any of it. COVID's fucking not real.
I'm getting pretty.
Fuck it. I don't care. Dude.
I'm getting pretty close to that.
Suck my dick, Tony Fauci. It's the third time I've said that on this podcast.
I'm getting pretty close.
It's a seasonal flu, and what they're trying to do is use leaky vaccines to create a more dangerous variant, so then they can use that as an excuse for further lockdowns. It's fucking plain as day. Look up Marek's disease. Everyone at home, go Google Marek's disease in chickens. Anyway, what was it? What were we saying?
How passive aggressive language.
Oh yeah. Let's use COVID as the problem. Okay, how about we close the borders?
Right.
How about we not let in thousands of third world unvaccinated, undocumented people who have no history of any kind of medical treatments? It seems like a really big COVID problem.
Yep.
And they say, well, no.
Yeah.
No, that's racist.
Right. Why don't we have BLM?
And they're like
massive gatherings
of people. That's not a solution. That's a racist solution.
Right.
What we're actually going to do,
is a good example,
is do vaccine passports.
Right.
It's like, but no, we shouldn't do it. Like, well, no, we have to address the problem of all the people coming across the border. It's like, well, I just gave you a fucking solution.
Yes.
Close the fucking border.
Right.
But they don't want real solutions. They want their solutions.
Exactly. That is a good example.
This is what happens when you presuppose ideology or we're using the venting feelings, but when you use ideology and feelings as a substitution for sound policy.
Yes.
Right?
That's the thing. They don't care about feelings. They use feelings as a Trojan horse to get what they want.
This is something that a lot of I've noticed. A few of the people I listen to, Jesse Kelly is one of them, who say this a lot because it's clearly a branding thing for them.
Sure.
But it's part of a communist takeover.
Yeah, right.
And it seems cringy and weird and
it's a boomer sounding
it's a
thing.
boomer con take, right?
Yeah.
It's a boomer con take.
But it's also true.
Yeah. It's a boomer con take that the plutocratic elites are taking billions of dollars in international bribes to allow China to take over the world, right? Yes, I understand people taking $1 billion in bribes isn't a very communist thing to do, but then again, China's not very communist either.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a communist infiltration.
Communism is the gun... I'll fuck this up.
Schrodinger's political ideology.
Yeah.
It exists where it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah. That's better. Yeah.
And so, one of the first things that they did in Mao's China was they and in Soviet Russia is ideology became more important than solutions, right?
Totally.
So they would decide on something that was coherent with their ideology and they would force it to work. Anyone who saw Chernobyl saw this, right? No, our engineering is perfect. We didn't make a mistake.
Right.
No, we didn't.
Yes. Yeah. There's the 4th season of Fargo actually did which is funny, but whatever.
I like Fargo.
It's
good. I haven't seen the 3rd or 4th season. I really like the first 2.
They're the best.
The first 2 are the best.
Yeah. But I think it's the 4th season. Maybe it's the 3rd season. Yeah. 3rd season is about there's a big theme around this phenomena. It's there's man's truth and then there's God's truth.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a biologically ingrained cultural. It's a meme, not stupid silly things on the internet, like what actual memetics are.
We should do a Fargo episode.
It's
a movie that shows everything.
So
the show is biblical. You must see this shit the whole time.
That's why I'm bringing it up right now.
The shit is biblical.
Oh boy, because it exploits and modernizes the only story that there is, which is the archetypical story of Jesus. It's the only story there is. Or I shouldn't say that. It's the ultimate. It's the end of every story. The end of every story is Jesus' sacrifice. But
one of the best, also the best things about Fargo is it talks about and sees things as they are, not how they could be.
It recognizes malevolence.
Yes, and in the 2nd season where there's the flashback where it shows where the crime lord, takes his son to the movie theater.
Yes, yeah.
And the guy says to him, "Pretty dumb move bringing your kid."
Right.
And he looks at him and says, "He's got to learn how men are."
That's
not
right.
what they will do.
That's right.
Not what things could be. He needs to learn how men are.
There's you're very right that it's biblical because the Bible essentially talks about 2 negative forces. There's malevolence, there's disaster, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and they feed on one another and they bleed into one another, but whatever. There's disaster, which is it's hailing out and my house gets destroyed. Natural disasters are disasters. Things that seemingly, although it's deeper than this, but seemingly don't have personalities or entities attached to their happening. Right? They just happen.
Yep.
And disaster is a part of the negative elements of the world. But there's also malevolence, which is when actors push disaster into the world. From a left-right paradigm, the left only sees disasters.
Yes.
And the right recognizes that there are disasters, but there's also malevolence.
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. There's yes, and again, they speak to each other, and the force that pacifies malevolence is sacrifice, which is so fucking deep and profound that it's hard for me to even like look at it. You know, it's not fighting malevolence, it's sacrificing yourself to malevolence.
Yeah.
Because that is what will tear apart its effectiveness. And it's and that's the ultimate story.
Which is it's odd.
And it's like, wow, man, that's like
it
holy moly.
I mean, it's weird because like while I totally that makes sense. The right sees malevolence, the left sees disaster. The left seems to characterize disasters as malevolence.
Yes,
that seems to be a major move.
Absolutely,
which is they need to take things, whether it's COVID or white supremacy, or we can go back to when it was bipartisan.
Oh, they just manufacture it.
Yeah,
because they don't think it's real as a force, but they have to recognize it somewhere. Yeah. They just take it and pick it and put it where they want.
They say it's a natural, normal, self-evolved thing, while also combating it as if it was an opposing army.
That's right.
And whether or not that speaks to just like how our lizard brains formulate like conflict and solutions.
There's some of that. Yeah.
Or there's like if people are mustachio twirling villains.
Right.
Like there's probably a mixed degree. But like for people who claim that these problems are so ingrained in our society. Right. They don't seem to have really many solutions for it.
No, because they also don't. Well, this is where postmodern. This is the fundamental disagreement between what I see as Judeo-Christian, the West, and postmodernism, is the West like recognizes and looks malevolence in the face, and sees it as a force of nature that has to be dealt with, and the general prescription is sacrifice. Postmodernists only see malevolence as a social construction. Yeah. And and even deeper than that, which is even scarier than that, is they only see it as a end result of language, which is why they're so obsessed with the linguistic origins of phenomena. It's when you say, it's why when any, it's
they don't prescribe that these emotions could have, or these feelings could have resulted from natural stimuli. They had to be pulled out of the ether with someone's mean words.
Yes. Yeah. That's what postmodernism is.
Yep. That people aren't against Drag Queen Story Hour because it sexualizes and fetishizes children and brings pedophiles into libraries. They're against it because people who hate gays say naughty words on the internet.
Yes. Yeah. And it's hard. And I'm like right about this, but it's like it's hard for me to articulate it. Yeah. But it's like it's only a social construction that can only be brought about by language. Yeah. It's when you say things like, well, this is harmful to children, a postmodernist will respond by, well, what do you mean by harmful and what do you mean by child? Yeah. That's the response. Whereas the right looks malevolence in the face and says, well, we need to sacrifice our base debauchery instincts for drag queen pedophilia. And not do that in order to prevent the harm being done to children, because those words mean things. And the left said, "Well, the left says what? The left says, what do you mean?
How is this any different than having kids go to church camp?"
Yes, and that is it's a construction of language. It's what do you mean? I couldn't have said it better, honestly. What do you mean by harm, and what do you mean by children, and what do you mean by, because it's only a social construct. It's the perspective.
It's only a social construct, except the fact that they're gay from birth.
Well, this is where right.
Except for the fact that they're all born gay with gay genes.
Well, again,
because that's not a social construct
because they don't care about the rules. They care about winning. Yeah. So this is so again, it's like this is like the core story. This is why I always like fall back to it, and it's also why, and it's good. What we should do, and we should wrap up in a little bit.
Yeah.
But what we should do is I've mentioned this in the past, like, and you're right. Do you want to do like I want to do like an art because I'm pretentious, but like a movie, whatever.
Let's do it.
And because I think not because like I want to be like a lame fucking like Hollywood review podcast, but because I really enjoy and have a lot of fun with like teasing out the cultural pieces of these things.
Did you watch? I asked. It just came out. Judas and the Black Messiah.
No.
I saw it the other night. It is, clearly one of these movies that's getting made because black art is in the prominence, but it's very good.
Yeah. What's it on?
It's about Fred Hampton. So Fred, me as like a populist anarchist person, I love Fred Hampton. So he's one of the Black Panther leaders from the '60s.
Okay.
Right. He was murdered by the federal government when he was 21 years old. 21 or 20, early 20s. And he was unique amongst the Panther leadership and the revolutionary leadership of that day because he believed in what he noted as a rainbow coalition, which is all races, all colors, all creeds, all religions. We need to band together to fix all these problems. He was the one. He was the one who started the free lunch program in Chicago, fed like thousands of kids. And the movie, it's based on the true story. I'm sure they took some liberties. The movie is about Bill O'Neill, a young black guy who gets arrested for stealing cars and impersonating an FBI agent. And the FBI cut him a deal that says you will infiltrate the Black Panther Party and get close to Fred Hampton and you won't go to prison for 5 years. So the movie is all about Lakeith Stanfield. Did you see Uncut Gems?
Yes.
With Adam Sandler?
Yep.
You remember his black friend with the dreads who keeps him in touch with Kevin Durant and like the Stone, the guy who keeps calling, keeps ignoring his calls? That's Lakeith Stanfield.
Okay.
He was also in Sorry to Bother You and like a few other really good movies. And he plays the informer. And the movie's great because it talks about like a cool story, right? Like a revolutionary speaker guy who started like a civic movement. And they were very much like a Black Power movement. They were very much communist, which I'm not into, right? Like they loved Che Guevara, they loved Mao, they loved all those people, which is very consistent with like late 60s leftist revolutionaries, right? But Fred Hampton wasn't.
They probably earnestly didn't know.
They didn't know. They didn't have all the information that we had.
I get that.
And then one day, a team from the Cook County DA's office, not the Chicago Police, not the FBI, not any one singular police department that could be held accountable for it, kicked in the door to Fred Hampton's apartment, shot everyone in the apartment. I mean, they didn't kill all of them, but killed the guy sitting by the door with a shotgun, and then they shot him twice in the head when he was asleep in his bed. Because they had drugged him earlier that night. So it's a great story about a revolutionary leader in America being assassinated by the FBI. And I think you would like it because it's not like a binary film. It's not saying that like all the black people are good and all the white people are bad. Like they dedicate a significant amount of time to showing that like a lot of the members, like the most violent members of the Black Panthers at this time were bad people. And they spend time. You saw Breaking Bad? Remember Todd from Breaking Bad? He plays
Jesse Plemons.
Jesse Plemons from Friday Night Lights and he plays the FBI agent.
Got it.
And when like there's a scene when it's inside his house. He's meeting with Bill O'Neill in his house, and he has all the veteran stuff. Dress blue photos, awards, medals, flags, everything you would assume. Like a guy in the FBI in the 60s did before he joined the FBI, right? And like as the operation gets like more and more fucked up, like you can see that he is not like okay with it.
Absolutely.
But it's like
he's conflicted.
His whole identity is like I'm an FBI agent.
Tied to
I
the idea.
Law and order.
That sounds
like,
really good.
I fight communism. Like, and you can see in his face that like his bosses, because they have Martin Sheen plays what's his name? The head of the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover. Martin Sheen plays J. Edgar Hoover. And like as they have some scenes where J. Edgar Hoover's, his tendencies come out.
He's kind of weird.
and Todd's boss. And like you can like he does such a good job. At looking tormented. Because like he can't admit to himself that like what they're doing might be really bad.
This isn't. I'm one of the good guys.
I'm one of the good guys. And he never breaks. Like he still very much like completes his mission. And like does everything. But you can tell he's not happy about it. And it would have been really easy for the movie just to make him a racist psychopath.
That's
and
very
as
mature.
We know, he plays a great racist psychopath. From anyone who's seen Breaking Bad.
He
does a great job of that.
Yes.
So like they made a conscious decision to make him conflicted and make the more violent Panthers like not great people who just like go out and kill cops for no reason.
A lesser movie would turn it into a black and white movie.
Yes, it's a great movie. Keith Stanfield, who plays the informer, he's definitely the main actor.
Sure.
I don't think he's on paper as the main actor.
Yeah,
but he does an amazing,
not top billed,
amazing performance.
Yeah.
Like,
what's it
really
on?
Good.
What is it?
It was on HBO Max.
Okay.
And then it left HBO Max, and I think it's going to get released on one of the other streaming systems.
Yeah. So what we should do?
If we want to do an art episode, you should try to check it out.
Okay.
You can find it.
Let's connect this week on certain movies, because
I
think
like
that
idea.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
All right. Good job.
Nice.